The grand hall of Eldoria shimmered under the soft glow of enchanted lanterns. Crystal chandeliers hung from the high ceilings, reflecting light in thousand dancing sparks. Shadows flickered across the marble floors, and the air smelled of cedar, wildflowers, and something faintly magical, like the forest itself had decided to step inside. Lyra entered quietly, her cloak brushing against the floor, her dark hair catching the lantern light. She had never been inside a royal palace before. The walls were carved with scenes of battles and triumphs, kings and queens long gone, their faces frozen in stone. Lyra felt a strange tug in her chest, a mix of awe and unease. She had come here for a simple reason, to witness the court and learn about the customs of this strange, powerful land. The hall was full of nobles, diplomats, and guards. Everyone was talking, laughing, and exchanging formal bows. Lyra kept to the edges, moving with careful steps, trying not to draw attention. She did not understand the rules of seating, the hierarchies, or the subtle glances that carried threats and promises alike. Then, without realizing it, she found herself moving toward a row of chairs at the front of the hall. She didn't know why, but something pulled her forward, as if an invisible current guided her steps. And there he was, Kale, the Alpha King of the Wolf Clan. The very name alone made nobles bow their heads. Even the bravest men and women spoke of him in hushed tones. He was known for his power, his control, and his fierce loyalty to his people. Legends said that Kale could sense truth in the heart and fear in the mind with a single glance. Lyra did not know the stories. She only saw a man who sat straight and tall, his silver-gray eyes scanning the room, his presence commanding every shadow to kneel in respect. His hair was dark as midnight, and his jawline sharp like it had been carved from stone. When his gaze fell on her as she approached, it was as if the air itself had shifted. She didn't notice at first where she had sat. It wasn't until a courtier whispered something to another that she realized the truth. She had taken the chair next to the Alpha King himself. A chill ran down her spine. She wanted to stand, to apologize, to run, but before she could move, Kale's eyes met hers. There was a pause, a quiet, heavy moment that felt like the forest holding its breath. He studied her, and she felt as if his gaze was not just looking, but seeing, right through her, into the parts of herself that even she didn't understand. Then he leaned slightly forward, his voice low and controlled, carrying the weight of authority. "You are far from home, yet you sit with no fear. That is unusual." Lyra's heart beat faster. I did not mean to intrude, Your Majesty," she said softly. Her voice sounded smaller than she felt. Kale's lips curved, just a little as if amused, though his eyes remained serious. "Perhaps, or perhaps fate has its own plan." The hall's chatter continued, but for Lyra the noise faded. She was aware only of Kale, of the scent in the air, something wild and magnetic that made her pulse quicken. She did not understand it, but there was something in her chest, a fluttering she had never felt before, something that whispered that this encounter was not by chance. The ceremony began. Nobles and dignitaries rose to their feet as the herald announced the start of the ritual. The mating ceremony, the alpha ritual of the Wolf Clan, was to commence. Lyra froze. Her mind struggled to process what she had just heard. The term mating made her blush, and yet there was a strange, almost reverent hush in the room. Kale's gaze never left her. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, he inhaled, his senses sharpening. He smelled her, her unique aura, her hidden magic, her very essence. A rare scent, one that legends whispered about but few ever encountered. He felt a pull deep in his core, a recognition older than the mountains and rivers that surrounded Eldoria. Lyra's stomach twisted. She didn't understand why she felt drawn to him, why her knees felt weak, or why her heartbeat thundered so loudly she feared he could hear it. She wanted to speak, to ask what was happening, but words would not come. The Alpha King stood, his presence filling the hall like a rising storm. He spoke, and the room fell silent. "Tonight," he said, "we honor the traditions of the Wolf Clan. The bonds of destiny are not chosen lightly. Some are felt and some are sensed." His eyes flicked to Lyra, and she felt a current of something she could not name. Curiosity, power, warning, and promise all at once. As the ceremony continued, nobles and diplomats moved in patterns she could not understand. Masks, dances, and rituals intertwined with the scent of moonflowers and burning incense. Lyra tried to focus, tried to follow the steps, but her attention kept returning to Kale. Every movement he made seemed deliberate, every glance calculated, yet beneath it all there was raw instinct, a force both terrifying and intoxicating. At one point, Kale extended his hand slightly, just enough that Lyra could see it. She did not move toward him, but she felt the pull, subtle yet undeniable. His hand seemed to call to something inside her, something that had lain dormant, waiting for this exact moment. The herald's voice broke the spell briefly, announcing the next stage of the ceremony. Lyra realized she was trembling. She was supposed to stand, to participate, to follow the ancient steps of the ritual. But she felt frozen, caught between fear and fascination. Kale knelt slightly before the altar, his eyes never leaving hers. His wolf instincts hummed beneath his human skin, a reminder of the power he wielded and the responsibility he bore. Lyra felt her own pulse respond, as if her body recognized a connection she could not yet name. Suddenly, a soft, almost imperceptible sound, a low growl or perhaps a whisper from the shadows, echoed in the hall. The nobles murmured nervously, but Kale's posture did not change. His gaze narrowed slightly, protective and commanding. Lyra felt a shiver run down her spine, not from fear, but from something deeper, a sense that the world itself had paused to witness this meeting. The ritual drew to a temporary close. Kale rose, and the hall exhaled as if releasing the tension it had been holding. Lyra sank into her chair, trying to collect herself. Her mind was a storm of questions. Why did he look at me that way? Why do I feel this pull? What is happening to me? Kale, on the other hand, remained calm, though inside his thoughts were anything but. He had sensed her power, her potential, and the rare scent that marked her as someone extraordinary. He was the alpha, used to control and command, yet here was something, or someone, who challenged his instincts and promised a destiny beyond his understanding. As the final lanterns were lit and the hall emptied, Lyra felt the weight of what had occurred. She had sat next to the Alpha King, unknowingly part of a ceremony that could change her life forever. And Kale, though he made no move, knew that this was only the beginning. Outside, the moon rose, silver and luminous, casting long shadows across the palace gardens. Kale stepped out onto the balcony, the night wind brushing through his dark hair. He inhaled deeply, catching her scent again, stronger now, more insistent. It called to him, a pull that promised both challenge and reward. Lyra, still inside, felt an inexplicable shiver. She could not see him, but she felt him, as if his presence lingered even when he was gone. The wind seemed to carry a whisper, a promise of things to come, of danger, discovery, and a connection that neither could ignore. For both of them, the night was alive. Destiny had stirred, a thread between two souls now visible. Neither understood its full meaning yet, but both could feel its pull. And in that moment the world shifted. The Alpha had sensed her, and she had unknowingly sat beside him. The consequences would be unavoidable. And the story had only just begun. The moon hung low and silver over Eldoria, its light spilling across the palace gardens and the surrounding forests. Lyra wandered through the quiet paths, her mind still tangled in the events of the ceremony. The memory of Kale's gaze, his commanding presence, and the strange pull she had felt was impossible to shake. It was as if something inside her had recognized him, even before her mind understood why. She paused beside a fountain, the water shimmering under the moonlight. Her reflection wavered in the ripples, and she saw more than her face. She felt a pulse of energy beneath her skin, a warmth she could not explain. It was unfamiliar and frightening, yet it carried a strange comfort, like a whisper from her own bloodline telling her that she belonged somewhere, with someone she had yet to fully understand. Lyra had always been cautious, but tonight her caution faltered. The pull toward Kale, the Alpha King, was stronger than reason. Something about him stirred her very soul. She had never experienced anything like it. An invisible thread binding her to a man she had barely met, a man whose scent lingered in the air and in her mind. Meanwhile, Kale was not idle. From his balcony overlooking the palace grounds, he observed her in the gardens. He had expected distractions, courtiers seeking favors, rivals plotting in the shadows. But Lyra, she was different. Her presence was undeniable, her aura unusual, powerful, and yet gentle. She was unlike any woman he had ever encountered. His wolf instincts, long disciplined and controlled, had stirred in ways he could not fully contain. The mating ceremony was meant to reveal bonds slowly, to allow time for testing and understanding. Yet with her, it was immediate. He sensed her power, and more importantly, he sensed a kind of innocence intertwined with strength, an untrained force that could either complement or challenge him. Kale descended from his balcony and entered the garden silently. The moonlight kissed his hair, casting him in silver and shadow. Lyra did not hear him approach until he was close, and when she did, her heart leapt. "Lyra," he said, his voice deep, controlled, yet softer than it had been in the hall. "You are far from your home. And yet you walk here freely, as though the palace grounds are your own." Lyra turned, startled, trying to steady her racing heart. I do not know the ways of your palace," she admitted. "Everything is so different, so strange to me." Kale studied her face. "Strange to you, perhaps, but not to me. I have seen many things, and I can sense much more than what appears on the surface. And you are not what you seem." Lyra's brow furrowed. "I am just someone passing through," she said, though her words felt hollow. Even to herself, she knew there was more. There had to be. Kale stepped closer, his presence overwhelming yet magnetic. "You are not just passing through," he said. "You carry a power that even I have not felt in decades, a rare gift, and it calls to me." Lyra took a step back, unsure how to respond. She had felt it too, the pull between them, but fear and confusion clouded her understanding. "I don't know what you mean," she said softly. Kale tilted his head slightly, a hint of curiosity in his expression. "Perhaps you do not yet understand, but you will, and when you do, you will know why you are here and why you are impossible to ignore." A silence fell between them, heavy with unspoken tension. Lyra's gaze drifted to the trees surrounding the garden, their shadows long and protective. She could feel the magic in the air, subtle but insistent, like the heartbeat of the forest itself. Kale's wolf senses were alive, attuned to her every movement. He noticed the way her pulse quickened, the slight tremor in her hands, and the way her aura seemed to shift when she drew a deep breath. She was trying to resist the pull, yet every instinct in him told him that she was meant to be close. "You fear what you feel," Kale said, as if reading her thoughts aloud. "But fear is not always a chain. Sometimes it is a guide." Lyra's lips parted slightly, unsure what to say. The words caught in her throat, tangled with emotions she could not name. She wanted to understand him, to understand this connection, yet part of her wanted to run from the intensity, from the destiny she had not chosen. Kale knelt slightly, bringing himself closer to her level without breaking the invisible distance she seemed to need. "You do not need to understand everything tonight," he said. "Only trust what your heart knows." The pull between them grew stronger, subtle and undeniable. Lyra's breath caught. She could feel her energy responding to his presence, as if her body recognized a bond her mind had not yet accepted. It was not fear anymore. It was curiosity, longing, and an almost aching awareness of a connection that transcended words. "You are different," Lyra whispered, finally finding her voice. "I have never felt anything like this before." Kale's gaze softened, yet remained intense. "And you never will again. This is only the beginning." The night stretched on. Kale led her through the palace gardens, showing her hidden paths, secret fountains, and ancient statues carved with runes that pulsed faintly under the moonlight. Everywhere they walked, Lyra felt a hum beneath her skin, as if the world itself recognized her presence and welcomed her. "Your bloodline is older than you realize," Kale explained as they walked. "It carries magic, ancient, wild, and difficult to control. Most would fear it. But you are not most people." Lyra listened, mesmerized and terrified at the same time. "Magic?" she asked. I have always felt something, but I never knew it was real." Kale nodded. "It is real, and it is part of why I sensed you tonight. You are exceptional. And you must learn to harness it, for your own sake and for the sake of this kingdom." As they walked, Lyra began to feel the faint stirrings of power within her. She raised her hands, watching faint sparks of light dance along her fingertips. Gasps escaped her lips. I can do this." Kale stopped and looked at her, eyes reflecting the moonlight. "Yes, and soon you will understand that your abilities are tied to destiny itself, but for now, trust yourself." Lyra's confidence wavered. "It feels overwhelming," she admitted. "I do not know if I am ready." Kale placed a hand gently on her shoulder. His touch was warm, grounding, yet it carried the subtle weight of command. "No one is ever ready. That is what makes courage so rare. You do not have to be perfect. You only have to be willing." A sudden rustling in the nearby bushes startled them. Lyra stepped back, but Kale's protective instincts flared instantly. He positioned himself slightly in front of her, senses heightened, wolf energy simmering beneath his calm exterior. "It is nothing," Kale said finally, his voice calm. "Just the forest, but it is a reminder. The world we live in is full of shadows, and not all are friendly. You must be cautious, and yet you cannot hide forever." Lyra nodded, though her thoughts were still spinning. She felt the threads of something larger pulling her forward, something she could not yet name but could no longer deny. The bond between her and Kale was awakening, subtle but undeniable, like the first stirrings of a storm beneath a quiet sky. They returned to the palace, the night now deep and still. As Kale escorted her to her chambers, the distance between them felt charged, full of unspoken tension. Lyra could not stop herself from glancing at him, wondering at the man who commanded so much power yet seemed tethered to her in ways she did not understand. When she finally reached her door, Kale stopped. He looked at her with an intensity that made her heart skip a beat. "Tonight is only the beginning," he said. "Tomorrow you will begin to understand what you are and what I am. But remember this, your destiny is tied to mine now. There is no turning back." Lyra swallowed, feeling both fear and a strange exhilaration. I understand," she said, though she did not fully understand anything. Kale nodded once, then stepped back into the shadows, his figure blending with the night. She watched him disappear, feeling the echo of his presence linger like the memory of a dream. Alone in her room, Lyra sat by the window, moonlight streaming over her face. Her thoughts raced. Who was she really? Why did Kale's presence make her feel both terrified and alive? And what was this bond that had awakened between them? Something ancient, powerful, and unavoidable. She did not have answers, not yet. But she felt the pull in her soul, a quiet insistence that her life was about to change forever. And somewhere in the night, Kale's senses reached across the distance, catching her faint, unique scent once more. He knew the bond had awakened fully now. The thread between them was visible in the shadows, stretching across palace halls, gardens, and the moonlit sky. And neither of them could deny it. The bond had begun. The morning sun rose over Eldoria, casting golden light across the towering walls of the Alpha stronghold. Kale walked the battlements, his senses alert to every sound. The palace had been quiet all night, yet his instincts told him something was wrong. He could feel it, a subtle disturbance in the air, the faint scent of someone watching, waiting. Lyra, meanwhile, was trying to make sense of the lessons Kale had begun teaching her. In the privacy of a hidden chamber, she practiced controlling the sparks of magic she had felt in her hands the night before. Each flicker of light brought both exhilaration and exhaustion. She wanted to master it quickly, to understand the power rising within her, but the energy felt unpredictable, wild, like a storm that could not be tamed. Kale entered silently, his eyes scanning the room before settling on her. Even when relaxed, he radiated authority. "Your focus is scattered," he said softly, but with that hint of command that made her straighten immediately. Lyra looked up, startled. I'm trying," she admitted, "but it's difficult. I can feel it, but I don't know how to control it." Kale stepped closer, studying her hands. "Magic is not just about control. It is about understanding yourself. Your power will respond to your will only if you trust yourself completely. Fear weakens it." Lyra nodded, though fear had been her constant companion for as long as she could remember. And now, standing so close to Kale, she felt another kind of fear. One of his presence, his intensity, the way his gaze seemed to pierce straight into her. Yet beneath it all, there was something warm and protective that she could not ignore. "Your bond with me," Kale continued, his voice softer now, almost a whisper, "is awakening. It will strengthen your magic if you let it, but it will also test you. And the world outside these walls will not wait for you to be ready." Before she could respond, a commotion erupted in the courtyard. Soldiers shouted, running toward the gates. Kale's eyes narrowed, and Lyra felt a cold knot of dread tighten in her stomach. "Stay here," Kale commanded, though he did not move toward the stairs. His posture was tense, every muscle ready for action. "Do not come out unless I call you." Lyra nodded, watching as he disappeared from sight. Her pulse raced, not just from fear, but from the undeniable pull she felt toward him. The bond they shared was growing stronger, almost tangible, a silent thread that hummed between them even when they were apart. From the courtyard, she could hear Kale's voice, calm but commanding, giving orders, rallying guards, and confronting the unknown threat. Shadows moved too quickly, shapes that vanished as soon as she tried to see them. Whispers reached her ears, hints of treachery, murmurs of someone within the court plotting against them. Lyra's heart sank. She had sensed danger before, but never so close, so immediate. And for the first time, she realized that her connection to Kale was not only about magic, it was also about survival. She needed to understand it, or they both might fall victim to forces she did not yet comprehend. Hours passed. The courtyard had emptied and Kale returned, his face grim though his eyes softened when they met hers. "The threat is contained for now," he said. "But it was not random. Someone is testing us. Someone wants to weaken the bond before it is fully formed." Lyra shivered. Who would do that?" Kale's gaze darkened. "Enemies of the kingdom, and perhaps enemies closer than we think. There are those who do not wish to see a human and an alpha bonded. They see it as a threat to their power, their plans." Lyra's stomach twisted. "Do they know me? Or is it just me being chosen?" Kale stepped closer, his hand brushing lightly against hers. "They know of you, and they know of me, but their understanding is limited. They do not realize that this bond is not just about tradition, it is about destiny." The words lingered, heavy with meaning. Lyra felt a strange mix of fear and determination. If she was truly part of a destiny greater than herself, she could not hide. She had to be ready. Kale led her to a quiet chamber overlooking the forest. "Tonight you will face your first trial," he said. "It is not just about magic. It is about trust, courage, and understanding your place in this bond. You will be tested in ways you cannot yet imagine." Lyra swallowed hard. "What kind of trial?" Kale's eyes softened, a rare vulnerability in his usual command. "A trial of the senses. The forest will challenge you. It will show you fears, desires, and truths, and I will be there with you, though I will not interfere unless necessary. You must face it fully, alone in mind if not in body." That night, under a moonless sky, they ventured into the forest. The trees whispered secrets, the wind carried the scent of unseen creatures, and shadows seemed to move with their own intent. Lyra's heart pounded as she followed Kale through narrow paths, guided by his quiet steps and the faint glow of his presence. They arrived at a clearing where the air shimmered, thick with magic. "This is where your trial begins," Kale said. "Close your eyes. Listen to the forest, feel its energy, let it reveal what you must know." Lyra hesitated, but she trusted him. Slowly, she closed her eyes and let the sounds and scents of the forest fill her senses. The wind whispered secrets in a language she did not understand, yet somehow knew. Her heartbeat synced with the rhythm of the earth beneath her feet. Then visions appeared in her mind. She saw flashes of herself, lost, afraid, running from shadows she did not understand. She saw Kale standing strong, commanding, yet carrying pain and loneliness she had never imagined. She saw herself and him together, facing darkness and light, learning to trust one another, bound by something neither could deny. Lyra gasped, opening her eyes. Kale was beside her, calm, watching her with concern. "What do you see?" he asked softly. I see danger," she admitted. "But also us together, fighting, protecting." Kale nodded. "Exactly, the forest does not lie, it shows truth. You are part of this world now and part of me. Your power is not just for you, it is for the bond, for the kingdom, and there will be those who wish to tear it apart." Lyra's resolve strengthened. "Then I will not let them," she said firmly. "I will learn, I will be ready." Kale placed a hand gently on her shoulder, his touch grounding her. "Good. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is action in spite of it, and you have courage in abundance." They returned to the palace, the first light of dawn breaking through the horizon. Lyra felt a new strength within her, a sense that she was no longer just an outsider. She was part of something larger, something powerful and dangerous, but also filled with hope. But danger was never far. As they re-entered the palace, Kale's sharp eyes noticed a figure slipping into the shadows of the hallway, a noble, someone who should have been loyal, yet moved with secrecy and intent. His wolf senses flared. "That shadow," he murmured, more to himself than to Lyra. "They watch us and they wait." Lyra felt a chill. "Do they know about me?" she asked. Kale's gaze hardened. "Yes, and they will try to use that knowledge against us. You must remain vigilant. Your bond is powerful, but power alone will not protect you." The day passed with lessons, patrols, and careful observation. Lyra trained under Kale's watchful eye, learning not just to control her magic, but to understand the connection between them, the bond that was awakening stronger with each passing hour. As evening approached, Kale led her to the balcony overlooking the forest again. The moon rose, full and luminous, casting silver light across the treetops. "Tonight," Kale said, "the threat we sensed will move. You may see it for yourself, but remember, you are not alone. The bond is real and it will guide you. Trust it, trust yourself, and trust me." Lyra nodded, her heart both heavy and light. She had never felt more alive, yet more aware of the dangers surrounding her. The connection to Kale was undeniable, and the thread between them seemed to hum in the air, visible only to those who could feel it. A sudden rustle in the garden below signaled the beginning. Lyra's pulse quickened. She and Kale moved silently to the edge of the balcony, peering down. Shadows shifted unnaturally, moving with intent, carrying whispers of betrayal and malice. Kale's hand brushed hers, a grounding touch, a reminder that even in the darkest of shadows, they were together. "Stay close," he whispered. "This is where you begin to see the true challenges of your bond, and this is only the start." The shadowy figure emerged fully from the trees, a cloaked noble with a dagger glinting in the moonlight. Lyra's breath caught. She recognized the figure. It was someone trusted in the court. Betrayal ran deep. Kale's eyes narrowed. "They dare challenge us," he growled softly, wolf instincts flaring. Lyra felt the bond between them surge, a wave of energy, strength, and instinct connecting them. The forest seemed to lean in closer, aware, protective. She no longer felt fear, only resolve. The shadow advanced, dagger raised, and Kale moved to intercept. Lyra felt the pull of the bond urging her forward, whispering courage and unity. And in that moment she understood. The path ahead would be dangerous, filled with betrayal, magic, and tests of trust. But she was no longer alone. The bond had awakened fully now, stronger than ever, and it would guide them both through the shadows that threatened to engulf the kingdom. The night was thick with tension, the forest around Eldoria alive with whispers and shadows. Lyra stood beside Kale at the edge of the palace gardens, her heart racing but steady with determination. The bond between them had strengthened through trials, through whispered secrets and shared energy, and it pulsed now like a living thread connecting their hearts and minds. Kale's gaze scanned the tree line, every shadow under his sharp observation. The enemy had revealed themselves. The noble who had betrayed the court, cloaked and armed, moved with silent precision, seeking to disrupt the alpha bond. Kale's wolf instincts flared, but he held them in check, controlled yet ready to strike. "Remember," he said softly to Lyra, "fear weakens the bond. Trust it, trust yourself, trust us." Lyra nodded. She had learned so much, how to channel her energy, how to sense the threads of the world around her, and how to respond without hesitation. Yet nothing could prepare her for the confrontation ahead. The shadowed figure stepped into the clearing, revealing themselves fully under the moonlight. It was Lord Valen, a man of influence and cunning who had sought power above all else. His eyes narrowed when he saw Kale and Lyra standing together, united. "You think your bond can protect you?" Valen sneered. "You are children playing with forces you cannot control." Kale stepped forward, his presence like a storm breaking over the treetops. "You are wrong," he said calmly. "This bond is not just power, it is destiny. And you will not break it." Valen's laughter was low and cruel. "We shall see." He raised his dagger, its blade glinting ominously in the moonlight. Lyra's pulse quickened, but the bond flared, a surge of energy connecting her to Kale. She could feel his resolve, his strength, and it bolstered her own courage. Kale moved like a shadow, fast and precise, blocking Valen's advance. Lyra felt the energy of the bond respond, filling her hands with glowing sparks that danced along her fingertips. She focused, letting her fear dissolve, letting trust guide her movements. "Now, Lyra," Kale called, and she released the magic she had held in restraint. The air shimmered as arcs of energy shot toward Valen, forcing him to retreat, stunned by her strength. Valen lunged again, but Kale intercepted, using a combination of skill, instinct, and power amplified by the bond. Lyra followed, their movements synchronized, a dance of trust and unity. The forest seemed to respond, leaves rustling and shadows bending to their will, as if the world itself had chosen their side. "You are stronger than I imagined," Kale said quietly, his eyes never leaving Valen. "But strength alone is not enough. You cannot break what is meant to endure." Lyra's hands glowed brighter, the energy within her responding to the bond more fully than ever before. "We will not let you harm anyone," she called, her voice echoing through the clearing. Valen stumbled back, his confidence faltering. He had underestimated their connection, the power of trust, and the unity between them. The bond was no longer just instinct, it was awareness, understanding, and courage fused together. Kale advanced, moving with purpose. "Leave now or face the consequences," he warned. Valen hesitated, realizing that he had misjudged the depth of the bond. Lyra stepped forward, her magic still shimmering around her. "You will not succeed," she said firmly. "Not against us, not against this bond." A final attempt by Valen to strike was met with Kale's swift interception and Lyra's focused energy. Together, they forced him to the ground, disarmed and defeated. The forest held its breath, then exhaled with the winds as if acknowledging their victory. Kale lowered his hand from the last strike, turning to Lyra. "You were magnificent," he said, his voice deep with admiration and pride. "Your power, your courage, you have embraced it fully." Lyra looked at him, her chest heaving, a mixture of exhaustion and triumph. "I felt connected to you," she admitted softly. "I don't think I could have done this alone." Kale's eyes softened. "You never were alone, the bond we share guided us, and now you understand this is more than power, it is trust, respect, and unity." The night grew quiet again, the only sound the rustle of leaves and distant calls of nocturnal creatures. Lyra felt a sense of calm, a clarity she had never known before. The danger had passed, at least for now, and in its place was a stronger connection to Kale and to herself. "Come," Kale said, extending his hand. "There is one final step." Lyra took it without hesitation. Together they walked toward the heart of the palace gardens, where a sacred grove awaited, a place where alpha bonds were traditionally sealed under the full moon. The grove was alive with subtle magic, trees arching like guardians, flowers glowing faintly with silver light, and a gentle stream flowing through the center, reflecting the moon in a perfect circle. "This is where the bond becomes more than instinct," Kale explained. "Here we acknowledge what has grown between us, not as ritual but as choice, mutual trust, mutual respect." Lyra's heart raced. The moment felt monumental, sacred. She had faced fear, embraced her power, and trusted Kale with her life. Now, standing in the grove, she felt the bond fully awaken, connecting them in ways beyond words. Kale extended his hand, and Lyra placed hers in his. The connection pulsed, warmth and energy flowing between them, not just magical but emotional and spiritual. She felt his thoughts, his emotions, his fierce loyalty and protective instincts all blending with her own. "This bond," Kale whispered, "is ours, not forced, not taken. We choose it together." Lyra nodded, tears of relief and joy welling in her eyes. "I choose it," she said softly, "with all my heart." The grove responded, the magic around them intensifying, a soft glow encircling them both. The wind carried whispers, not of danger, but of acknowledgement, of destiny fulfilled, of paths aligned, and of a future that could now begin. Kale's hand lifted to her cheek, his touch gentle, grounding, yet full of strength. "You are extraordinary," he said, his voice low and reverent, "and together we are unstoppable." Lyra felt a warmth she had never known, a sense of completeness and safety. I never imagined I could feel this way," she admitted. "But I trust you, Kale, I trust us." The moonlight bathed them in silver, the air shimmering with energy. Wolves in the distance howled, a sign of approval and acknowledgement of the bond that had formed. It was not just a union of power, it was a union of hearts, of souls, and of purpose. Kale and Lyra stood together in silence for a moment, letting the connection sink in. The forest around them was alive with approval, the magical energy of the grove reinforcing the strength of their bond. The danger of betrayal, the challenges of the world, and the uncertainty of the future all faded in the face of this moment. Yet even in peace, Kale's instincts remained alert. "The world will not wait for us to be ready," he murmured. "There are still shadows, still those who would challenge what we have built, but we face them together, and that makes all the difference." Lyra nodded, her hand tightening around his. "Then we face them together," she said. "No fear, no doubt, only trust." Kale's lips curved in a rare, soft smile, and he lowered his forehead to hers. "Then let this night be the beginning," he whispered, "of strength, of unity, and of something neither of us expected, yet both of us need." As they stood beneath the moon, the grove glowed brighter, the stream reflected their joined hands, and the trees seemed to lean closer, as if honoring their union. The bond was no longer just a thread. It was a force, alive, vibrant, and unbreakable. The first light of dawn began to streak the sky, hinting at a new day, a new era. Lyra and Kale had faced fear, betrayal, and the unknown, and they had emerged stronger together. The journey ahead would have its challenges, but the foundation had been laid, the bond sealed, and the connection undeniable. And as they stepped out of the grove, hand in hand, the first rays of sunlight touched their faces, illuminating not just their forms, but the promise of a future shaped by courage, trust, and love. The shadows had been faced, the trials survived, and the bond awakened fully. The story of Lyra and Kale was only beginning, but for the first time they walked forward with certainty, together, unstoppable and ready for whatever destiny had in store. The bond was sealed.